Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Create the Ripple podcast. I'm your host, Candace Smiley. Here we trust the niggle and we tell the truth. This is a podcast. We are looking to have conversations that matter, conversations that take courage to engage in, where we cut through the noise that exists online to bring you incredible content, amazing speakers, and stories to inspire you to live your best, listen to yourself, and tell the truth of who you are and who you just might become. Hey, I wanted to talk to you a minute today about the gig economy. What is the gig economy? It's basically the side hustle, side income economy that's become so popular today and age. I hope you're still listening to this ad because it's really important for me. I was in the network marketing industry for over 13 years and I had an incredible experience. I learned a ton of things, but there were many things about the industry of network marketing that I really didn't love. One of which was the overinflated products. Number two was the fact that I had to build a team or balance those things that we would call legs, the whole pyramid thing. I really was done with that. About a year ago, I was introduced to a social retail company. Social retail simply means that we are using our social media platforms, which are free, by the way, to promote products and services that we love. The affiliate marketing is booming. Not even going to lie. It's an incredible place to be in. And I'm speaking to the woman who's in her 30s or maybe in her 40s, and she'd like to create that extra income. She'd like to create income on her own time. And she'd like to do it in a company that isn't all about the hype, that has some real products that she can get behind, and would work with somebody who wants to teach her how to do that. If that's you, then I would really love it if you would reach out to me. Feel free to comment below or leave me an email. Scan the code. I'm sure there's a code somewhere if you're watching on my YouTube channel, but I would love to get in touch with you. And this is why. The company that I'm with, modere.com or modere.ca, depending on where you're at, check out shiftingretail.com. So that's shiftingretail.com. I want you specifically to go check out the values of this company and what their mission is. That was really important for me. I got flown down to the corporate offices and I had a chance to meet with the corporate crew and meet with the visionaries that are really driving the company forward. And what I discovered is this. The first thing they said to me was, Candace, when people come here from a network marketing company, they start making money. Now, disclaimer, this is work. This is going to take work. This is going to take energy, effort, time, and skill. It's not a get-rich-quick scheme. Those don't exist, at least not ones that I would like to put my name behind. However, this company pays us 10 to 36% on commissions of whatever we've moved within our business. And we get paid daily. We get paid up to twice daily. Biggest, coolest thing about this, if I move product, I get paid on the product, period. No balancing legs, no having to do any of that stuff. If product moves because of a referral that I did, whether it was through my social media, through a swipe up influencer, or a person-to-person conversation, doesn't matter. I'm going to get paid on it. And for me, being paid on the work and the effort that I do is important. So if this is something that's intriguing to you, I invite you to head over to shiftingretail.com or head over to Smiley, that's CSMILEY.shiftingretail.com, and you'll be able to join my team directly. If you've got some more questions, please comment below or find a way to contact me and get in touch, because I would love to share with you how we're building this and how affiliate marketing is the place for you to be. And trust me, once I show you how to do it with this company, I will show you the many companies, brick and mortar stores, you name it, sole proprietors, entrepreneurs who have an affiliate-based idea. And once you can do it with one company, you can do it with any of them. So I'm excited to teach you that. In fact, so excited, we're going to give you 120 days of done-for-you posts or text that will help you so that you don't have to worry about what to post or when to post or how to post it. We're going to give all of that to you. You just got to show up with drive, determination, and some cash flow to get you started. $39.99 gets you your affiliate link and code and gets ready to start. Maybe you want to try some product too. It's awesome. But up to 2 customer orders actually qualifies you for commission. So you don't even have to place an order, provided you've got customer orders that are moving in your business. Brand new customer orders qualify you for commissions every month. Super cool. Definitely an opportunity for somebody who wants to come in, put some effort in and work with integrity, work with honesty, but really begin to use the social media time that right now is really just wasted time and turn that into cash flow. Awesome. Hope you have a wonderful day and keep enjoying our show.
Here at Awakening the Wise Woman, we know what it's like to start the year with a big, audacious, exciting goal in mind and get to mid-February and realize we've made zero progress towards it. That's why this year we're inviting you to join us in our Awakening Your Goddess Mindset free workshop series at the end of February. This is an opportunity to understand more about yourself and how you work and how to make meaningful change your way. We'd love to see you there.
Hello friends, my name is Rachel Shumway, here to help you set loving boundaries so you can have the best relationship with the most important person in your life, you. Because when you uphold your boundaries, you gain the courage to open up and let yourself be seen, loved, and supported. Through a mix of coaching, cognitive restructuring, and step-by-step conversation strategies, which all starts with my free 4-step badass boundaries process, I give type A, really like type awesome women, the tools to bring confidence into their relationships with authenticity and ease. You can get started by grabbing your free starter kit on how to badassify your boundaries by clicking on the link in the show notes to get started. See you soon!
I'm excited for my guest today. We had, of course, our little pre-chat. My listeners all know that there's always a pre-chat, and we get, it's the good stuff, to be honest. I keep meaning to hit record and be like, we're recording already, because there's such good stuff. So anyway, I'm going to let her share her bio, who she is and where she's come from, how she got here. And of course, for if you're new and you're listening in, this is all about trusting the niggle and telling the truth. So all bets are off today in the conversation. I feel like I'm excited. So girlfriend, go for it. Let's let the listeners know who you are and we'll dive right into it.
Sure. So my name is Nischa Phair. I am a researcher, an author, a trauma-informed pleasure educator. And I have just released a book, which is really the culmination of a 30-year-long healing journey that I started in my mid-teens. And, to pick up on that thread of what did you say? Following the niggle?
Trust the niggle.
Telling the
Tell
truth.
The truth.
Trust the niggle. Yeah. It's been 30 years of detours and barking up wrong trees and making choices that didn't make logical sense to a lot of people. And at times I knew were completely wrong. And at the same time, completely right. They were necessary as part of how I was becoming who I am now. And the work I do now, I support survivors. I'm a trauma survivor myself, and was raised in a very turbulent, very violent home. And the work I do now really in supporting survivors is to help people connect with pleasure as an antidote to trauma, to feeling locked in our bodies, to feeling like we can't be our authentic selves, to feeling like we abandon ourselves at every turn. I really see pleasure as being inherently relational in the sense that it necessarily draws us out of ourselves. So where trauma makes us smaller, it makes us contract at the body and energy level. All forms of pleasure, sensual pleasure, especially, think of the last time you smelled a rose or, had a nice soak in the bath. You can feel your energy lift up out of your belly and fill every single inch of who you are. It literally takes you out of yourself and into the world. So that's really kind of the cornerstone of a lot of the work I do. I'm a somatic therapist, so everything is body-based. And yeah, I'm going to stop there because I feel like I've said a lot. So
I loved it. And that was where I got totally peaked when we were starting our little chit chat before we got started was, the pleasure base, because having gone through my own set of trauma around some sexual abuse, coming to a place where I am today, where I can enjoy pleasure in all of its forms and allow myself, that was a huge journey. And I was like, ooh, I'm excited to talk about this because I don't think we've talked about it enough. And I was actually got to be a guest on a podcast a couple of weeks ago with for men. And I got to be a woman talking about, pleasure. And they were saying like, how do we talk about these things if we feel like women are prickly? And I was like, well, women are working on it. But you got to tread lightly anyway. It makes me really excited that there are more conversations like this.
That's the whole thing too.
What?
Well, that's a whole thing too.
Yes.
Like, I would love to have that conversation.
I will connect you.
Because because the thing about being prickly, and this kind of sends us down the rabbit hole of fawning and this stress response it happens as a result of hierarchical stress and pressure. So the prickliness is usually symptomatic, not always, but often symptomatic of there being some kind of imbalance of power within the relationship, or the woman not feeling like she can be her authentic sexual self, that it's not going to be met with, integrity, or that her vulnerability isn't going to be respected, or that it won't be, picked up in a later argument or what have you. So it really comes down to safety, feeling safe in ourselves and safe in our relationships. But that's a little bit of an aside that I had to pick up on that from your
I know that my listeners are now like, really listening in, because I'm like, oh, this is about to get juicy. And, this is one of the reasons why I love to do the podcast right now, sharing with you beforehand. There's no real format here. It's like two people coming together. And for me, being able to talk about this stuff, both, on air with my partners is so important, because we just don't. And when are we taught how to, to talk about our traumas, right? That have an impact on our ability to be intimate and maintain those relationships. Even just friendships is really interesting. As I've been doing quite a bit of healing work, I realized that the way I was showing up with my masculine relationships was also how I was showing up in my friendships. And I was like, no wonder I can't have deep, meaningful women friendships, because I've got this hang up around intimacy. Like, it was so deep. It wasn't just showing up in the physical. It was also showing up, in the emotional and that sort of thing. And so it's been a magical little journey to talk about it. So let's talk more about your book, because obviously you've written about it. I love that you're like, it's 30 years of detours and barking up trees. And I love that, because I'm writing a book right now called Detours, because I feel like my entire life has been like, whoops, detour. And so as soon as you said that, I'm like, okay, we align. So let's talk about the detours. Let's talk about the fawning. Let's talk about, getting here and maybe leaving our listeners with some hope, if they're sort of aligning to what you're saying, that, they're going to have a resource to be able to listen into.
Yeah. So where should we start? What do you want to?
Let's talk about the detours and how you got to writing the book. I like that part.
Okay. So the detours, I mean, it starts, like I said, so my first memory of life is of being abused, right? So this goes back way, since the beginning. Mm-hmm. And I repressed all my trauma, but I always knew that there was something wrong. It felt like there was this itch somewhere in my body that I just couldn't find. I couldn't scratch. I didn't know where it was, but there was something that was just always off. And I would know that I'm not supposed to be like this. Life isn't supposed to be like this. Family isn't supposed to be like this. What is going on? And I couldn't put my finger on it. Now, I always had little fragments of memories when I was growing up, and I kind of explained them away and said, oh no, that's normal. Everybody goes through that.
Yeah.
And then, in my teens, I had a lot of, eating disorders, panic attacks, anxiety, depression, the whole gamut. Mm-hmm. And I had my first experience of repressed memory coming up to awareness at the age of 20. And it was when I'd first started doing somatic healing practices with a therapist. And I was lying in bed at night, and all of a sudden it was just like this puff of air kind of emerged, and a puff of awareness, and everything kind of changed from then. And that was the first kind of detour I think that I I can identify where I dropped out of university. I started traveling and I basically ran away from this truth that I, on some level, had known was there the whole time, my whole life, right? Had a lot of alcohol and drug abuse through my 20s. And then when I was 26, I was snowboarding in France and I fell off a mountain, had a near-death experience. And the breakdown that I had as a result of that event was really kind of the initiation for this now 18-year-long, like dogged, singularly focused determination to really like root out every single last thorn of trauma, all of the itches that I couldn't scratch, and come into wholeness.
It's not a beautiful thing as you start to come into wholeness. It's a newer experience for me. I also experienced some of the anxiety, like you say. And for me, it was so subtle. It showed up in terms I was, inherently late. I was always worrying about things. I couldn't sleep. Like these were things that I thought that everybody just dealt with, right? Horrible nightmares. And I still can't even remember what happened, to me in my younger years, but I don't talk a lot about on the podcast, but, it's really interesting to me how it shows up. And I love how you said, I basically fell off a mountain. And I was like, that's typically how
I
it
did
happens.
actually fall off a mountain. I actually did fall off a mountain.
That's awesome. I'm so glad you're here.
I am too. I remember, I will never forget that moment of literally tumbling head overboard, one after another, hitting my head on like boulders and rocks and all, which like amazing. I still have a brain and a skull. And just like the most fervent begging, asking of, my guidance, something stopped me. And about 10 feet before a 200-foot drop down to like solid rock, there were these like little twigs that were sticking out of the snow. And it was enough. I guess I lost enough velocity or, force coming down that section that it was enough to hang my board on, and it just happened to catch it right at the right spot at the right time. It was at that moment, I think, when I think about that event specifically, that's when I realized that I was here for a reason, because I should have died. There's no reason why I should have, in all like physical reality, I should not have survived that. And that was a really big wake up call, because it was like responsibility. You have a job to do. You're here for a reason. You need to get on it. So
I love that. And from that, deeply grounded, beautiful place, I want to talk about the fawning. And I think that that's important. And I want us to get to the nitty gritty, that people can know you're very human. And let's talk about the fawning.
Okay. So do you want to talk, let's peel back and kind of talk about a little bit what fawning is first, so we can get a sense. So, almost every single relationship struggle that we complain about, that we repost about on Instagram, that we, like all the little cracks in the sidewalk that we keep tripping over, the losing ourselves to a relationship, the self-abandonment, not being able to see red flags, playing nice, letting someone else's needs or desires be more important than your own, all of that stuff, they are not behaviors, they're not choices, they're not faults or flaws or evidence of the fact that you're horrible at relationships. They are symptoms of this stress response fawn. Evidence of the fact that your nervous system has been triggered by some form of stress or absence of safety. So, fawning as a stress response, it's one of our many stress responses. And where fight flight is more, say, active, agitated, elevated feeling, it's also, just as a total sidebar, it's the stress response that was identified from watching how male bodies respond to stress, not how female bodies respond to stress. And fawn is how female bodies are not just like conditioned in our homes, families, and in society to respond to stress, but it's biological. We are biologically wired to use fawn as a stress response over any other. So other than some of those descriptions that I provided, things like people pleasing, performing, trying to be the good girl, making choices or doing things so that someone will like you, agreeing to certain acts in the bedroom to save a relationship, all of these kinds of things where we have to sacrifice our integrity or our authenticity in order to try to sustain or secure some semblance of safety within a relationship are sort of card-carrying fawning experiences. Does that feel thorough enough?
Very thorough. Else? And I really appreciate it, because I feel like I know certainly in my life, these were things that I did to maintain a relationship, like you say, to create that sense of safety. I'm amazed at how many things I did to not like listen to my own self or speak up my own mind, right? To make everybody else comfortable when I was so horribly uncomfortable. And it's just crazy now. So then you wrote this book. I love the book, because I know people are like, give me something to through, because that's me. How do I get through that?
Yeah, well, and so the other piece that, because you mentioned voice, the thing I really want to drive home is that all this is happening on a subconscious level. It's not conscious. We don't intend to do it. We're not sitting there being like, oh, yay, let's people please. I'm going to sacrifice my boundaries and dissolve my sense of self. It's not things we do because we want to. It's because we've either been conditioned to by our families, by emotionally unavailable people, or by, what society, our social conditioning tells us what gender is supposed to be. So these kind of behaviors are part of how we're expected to perform femininity within the patriarchal paradigm. So Fawn the book. That happened. So I got out of an abusive relationship in 2014 and spent 2 years just like deep diving into intentional celibacy. And I was just doing all of my own sacred sexuality work and trying to heal my relationship to pleasure and sex. When I came out of that experience, I had an experience of fawning with just a guy that I hooked up with. He was like my first dipping the toe back into the pond. I was like, I just want some like really low key, grade 9, making out like horny teenagers, like no penetration, like just kind of, I just wanted to like, just like make out a little and like feel that kind of like juicy, sweaty summer kind of, skin on skin connection. And that was my goal. I told him that was my goal. I was really clear about like, here's what I'm looking for. This is what I'm up for. We had a date. There were a ton of red flags and we're making out. And it was like really unsatisfying. And the whole way through, I was being responsible for my pleasure. I was telling him what I wanted. I was like stopping and saying, hey, no, can you do this? And it wasn't getting through. And at one point I was just like, okay, this has to stop. This is not working. And right as soon as I had that thought in my head, he got up. This guy was 6'5", and he literally caged my body underneath his, and like with these bulging eyes, just snarled at me, we're having sex, just like that. And I froze. Because what do you do when you're alone in your home? And at this time I was living in the woods on a farm. No one could hear me scream. So he rolled out onto his back, and I kind of got this really burning feeling of disgust in my belly as I started to kind of climb on top of him. And as I did, he lost his erection. Which on one point I was like, hooray, Thank you. And yet at the same time, I was already triggered. So I couldn't actually pull myself out of this state. Now, I didn't have any awareness of what was going on a body level at this time. I knew about fawning in the context of abusive families and abusive upbringings for children, those kind of parent-child dynamics. But I hadn't at all delved into how it affects us in adult intimate relationships. So anyway, about 2 weeks later, I started become just like flooded with this grief, with self-hatred, with, again, like disgust over what had happened. And I realized that I was having this basically flashbacks of every single time I had fawned, not just with him, but with every single one of my partners. So that was kind of the event that kind of sent me down this road of trying to understand, like, A, why does this happen? B, like, why is my body abandoning me when I've done all this work? I've done the lists. I've done all the, the supermoon goddess rituals. Like, I've put in the time, and so the book is really the product of that research, work well with my clients, and my own personal experiences.
So important. And I really appreciate you sharing that story, as vivid as it is, because I know that's been true for myself, right? I'll promise myself, like, this is my limit. I'll talk about that. And then, you're just like, how do I end up back here again? And that, I know that feeling, that deep heaviness of, oh, right. It's been a long time, but thank you so much for sharing that, because I think it's a very common experience, and that it pushes a lot of women, at least it did for me, to this entire divorce from myself, where, the whole premise around trust in the niggle is listening to yourself. But if you've been shoving that listening down for so long, when you start to listen to it, it can be scary because you're so worried about all of those awful feelings coming up as you start to really lean into that. And I think it's so important that, those of us who have leaned into those feelings and dealt with it, share our experiences so they know that there is hope on the other side.
There is.
Wow.
Yeah.
Very exciting.
It's, I think that, you're right in the sense that, like, I believe that pretty much every woman out there has fawned at one point or another in a either intimate or relational context. We're just not aware of it because it's, again, so part of our conditioning and how we're expected to behave, but B, it's how, for those of us in heterosexual pairings, it's part of how men are conditioned to expect femininity to be performed, right? So I try to get this across in the book, that it really has to be like a team effort. We can't just be, women doing all the emotional labor and hoping that it's going to fix everything. We need our partners and men generally to say, okay, so this is really the linchpin that's holding misogynistic hierarchical oppression in place. How can we dismantle it and come into a place where we prioritize pleasure in our relationships proper and in the bedroom, as a way of kind of coming through all that trauma?
And the great
it's like the way, and sorry, go ahead.
I love it. It's just like you say, the way and.
Oh, it's, I really believe that pleasure is both the way, as in, like, it's the instruction manual, and it's also, it's the tool.
It is.
And in a way, it's also the apparatus, in the sense that we use our embodied experiences of pleasure as the device for healing and for coming into, more meaningful, more authentic connection with one another.
With yourselves. I've found it to be, so I did a lot of healing in 2020, and a lot of it I don't necessarily talk about as much. But one of them was a reconnecting to my feminine, because I had, after the assault, leaned way more into my masculine to protect myself. And so my feminine side really showed herself as the siren. So I would dress up and I would, perform, as you've talked about, right? But there was a huge disconnect, right? Not from my head to my heart, and certainly not down south, right? Just total disconnect. And when we started to work on connecting all three, I felt like I was going to throw up. Like, it was the most awful sensation to try to connect all of them, and to realize I had patterns. Like, I would always give pleasure to inspire him, in every
Mm-hmm.
single interaction I had. And I thought I was an empowered, woman who had this figured out because I'd done all the work to be comfortable and, we could do whatever in the bedroom. And I was like, but I do this every single time. I've never just showed up and said, can you start first? Why do I have to start first? Why is it my job to get you in the mood? And, to be encouraged by my feminine balance coach to be, so before you start your next relationship, you need to say this. I'm not starting this way. It's like, what? That's a thing? They're not going to be upset? And the person I shared it with was like, well, that's fair. It's like, oh, so not a big deal for you, but totally a big deal for me. And, how that is. And so I share that so that, other women might think about how this fawning is so subtle that you may not notice it. And like you say, it's sort of trained in and ingrained. I don't even know where I picked it up, but if I think about it, that's often how, it's certainly visualized, is that there's this start, right? So anyway, I want people to be inspired. I'm inspired to read your book. So right now, currently your book is only in an e-form, but it's going to be available soon. Yes?
Yes,
okay.
on Amazon in paperback.
I'm excited. I'm excited. Okay.
Yep.
So if somebody wanted to connect with you more, what's the best way for them to do it? Because I know that they are going to want to. So how do people find you?
So my website is nischaphair.com, and there's some information, a few resources on there. You can always book in for I do free consults for anyone who's interested in sort of dipping their toes in and just seeing whether it feels like the kind of journey they want to go on, or something to support whatever work folks are already doing. You can find me on Instagram at Nischa Phair. And I think that's it. Website, Insta. Yes.
That's amazing. So what is the one thing you'd love to leave my listeners with? And yes, I'm leaving them on a cliffhanger because I want them to go and connect with you to do the work or get your book, because I think this is deep. I think it is powerful. And I think that more women need to become aware of this, but it's a deeply personal journey. So what can we leave the listeners with?
I think, my message lately is really to lean into self-trust and self-compassion as like letting that be our guides for how we work. Because I think when we have histories of abuse or trauma, we become really hard on ourselves. We're really self-critical. There's a really strong, pervasive belief that people who've experienced sexual trauma are irreparably broken, and that they have to settle for less than optimal type of relationships or people because healthy love isn't going to want them. Right. And can I swear on this podcast?
You sure can.
It's total fucking bullshit. Okay.
Yes, it is.
It really is. And I having come through that experience myself and seeing that like so many of my relationship choices, I down dated for years because I thought that the kind of partner that I felt would be my equal wouldn't love me, that I was unlovable to good people. And so I think that's something that I really want to encourage people to lean into, is just to have self-compassion for all of those voices that aren't true. Because they're the voices of your wounded child or the wounded part that was injured by, whether it was physical, emotional, sexual abuse, or substance abuse in the home. All of these traumas, they cut so deep. So that is the last piece that I think I'll leave folks with, is just to really, really lean into self-compassion.
That's incredibly beautiful. And so as we shared before we started the episode, it's really important to me that not only do we talk about things that are maybe difficult or challenging, right? I want to have conversations that take courage to have. And courage, I think, sometimes to listen to, because, maybe it's hitting a trigger point and it can feel really overwhelming when you've got some work to do. But there's so much fear and there's so many voices. And I mean, I kept my mouth shut for 20 years and like you, dated down, like I made so many choices in so many areas of my life because I thought I was unlovable on some level and broken. And, doing the work, I just wish more people would do the work because the other side it's amazing. There's still work to do, but
Always. It never stops.
Right. The freedom, the way you feel to, my daughter asked me yesterday, she was looking at the wall. We have a family wall. And there's a lot of pictures of me, both, in mountain streams and, pregnancy and lots of smiles. And I mean, we're all on the wall. And she was looking at one in particular and she said, "Mommy, do you love yourself?" And I said, "Yes, I do." And I thought she's going to comment on how many photos were up there. And she said, "I don't know if I love myself." And I said, "Well, we're going to talk about that, right?" It's amazing. She's only 6.5 and she's already got these questions about worthiness and everything else. And I said, "How come?" And we had this amazing conversation about, how she's like, "Well, some of them not, some of them forget to listen." And sometimes I'm like, "Oh," right. So it's amazing how subtle it is on so many levels. And so, if you're a woman and you're listening and you're feeling like it's your fault, it's not, it's the programming. Like it's out there. And anyway, I want to do some more collaborative work with you because I think what you're talking about is a lot of what I talk about. And I don't want to be people's coaches, but I want to direct people to women I trust who can hold them safely when they walk through that. So for my listeners, keep an eye out for that coming out, especially as your book goes live. And we'll make sure that we have all the links to connect with your beautiful self down below in the show notes so that people can reach out and find some relief and healing. So thank you so much for holding space. Thank you.
Wonderful to be here. Thank you for the time.
And to the rest of my listeners, you know the drill. Like, share, comment, especially this one. I feel like this was a really important episode. So make sure that if you have someone on your mind and your heart who needs to hear this, share that with them and have them reach out. And let's see if we can help some more people step out and into the fullness of who they are and wholeness. Well, thank you for listening to another episode of the Create the Purple podcast. I want to give a shout out to Dr. Mikolai Rajic, who is the founder and managing director of Marriagenomics Incorporated. He has got an incredible YouTube-based program where he talks you through data as he interprets it regarding the COVID pandemic. Now, we have stayed far away on this educational podcast from weighing in on any of the pandemic itself. However, it's important for us to direct you when we discover a source that we believe to be grounded, who leaves their opinion on the entire thing out of it, but simply provides you with a great resource to interpret the data that, of course, is just continuing to come at you. So we've done a big shout out. We're really grateful that we, and I personally know Dr. Mick myself, and I'm really grateful that he's been taking the time to put out some incredible videos going through and dissecting the data as it's coming to you. So we're sharing a link to Marriagenomics, their YouTube channel specifically. We'll have a link down below in the show notes. Have a look at that and go follow along for some amazing interpretation of the ongoing pandemic for your COVID safety. And thank you so much for listening.